What year did you join the service?
Oh, I don't know, 1940, 42 or 43, I think.
Okay. Were you drafted or enlisted?
I had 4 years in the service. I had two in the States and then 2 overseas.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. Will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
War, it didn't change me at all. No. No, I was the same going in, the same coming out. And you just, whatever happens, you just accept it and that's it. My mother and dad and my brother, Dewey, he was 3 years younger than I am. And we lived on Howard Avenue to start with. I was born in Rockford on Starkweather Road. I went to California looking for, they were selling or advertising for help out there, $6 an hour. And I thought I'd go out there and get some of that. I was painting then, and I didn't have any experience. I couldn't do anything. So I think I was in California when they were bombing Pearl Harbor, because I came home that day because I knew they were going to call me. So when I got home, I had a postcard, Uncle Sam needs you. So the way it went. And I was indoctrinated in Camp Grant right away. From then, I had basic training, and then I went to Macomb, Georgia. It was colder than Billy Hill down there, and up in the mountains, and clay soil. So we stayed there. I had basic training again, and then I moved to Orlando, Florida. And that was a P-38 base. And I was a cook then. They said, you, and you're a cook. So I stayed there, and then we went to Jackson, Mississippi. And I drove a Greyhound bus. I was outside of the camp for about 20 miles, and I drove the bus for the soldiers into town. Then I'd pick them up and take them back to camp. Then we moved from there to Tacoma, Washington. And I was 90 miles away from Seattle. And we had, the Russians didn't want any cast iron, they wanted all steel. So we had to take everything out and make it steel. We made a convoy going down to Spokane. The Russian ships were over there getting it, taking it home. Pretty soon they sent us up to Darwin. They were bombing Darwin. So we go up there, and we flew up there on a C-46. You get above so many feet, 1,000 feet, it gets pretty cold up there. We had no doors on it, no nothing. So we got to Darwin, and the Japs were bombing us, and one of the guys was laying in bed. So we go down to get him, to take him to breakfast. And he just bent over to tie his shoe, and a bomb come through the tent right where he was laying, went through the cot, and it was a dud. So, of course, I never knew if it was going to explode later on. We all hollered bomb and got out of there. So we stayed there in Darwin for a while, and then the warrant officer and I were going to start a PT boat and go over in Biak and get the Japs, because they were bombing from Biak. So we couldn't get the damn thing started. We had a horrible time. So we finally gave up, and pretty soon we moved to Biak. And the Dutch island, and they were looking at the trees because they're all latex trees, and the Japs wanted that because the Japs had no natural resources, no coal, no steel, no ore. We went from there. We made an air base up there on Biak. And of course, I'm a cook all the time. I have a rating of a corporal. He says that the most I could get was a corporal. And they had a sergeant that was a mess sergeant. And the Dutch were counting the trees that we cut down. We had Japs were in the trees sniping. So we had a shotgun, and full gauge shotgun. We take them out of the trees. And then pretty soon we had the 30 caliber machine guns wasn't doing the job, so we made a 50 caliber machine gun, and that cut the tree down. So the Dutch started to count the trees. So we chased the Japs out. And then from then, we went to Leyte, to the Philippines, up in the northern part of the Philippines. And they were fighting up there, so we had to go up there. And we got there, I had 190 in our company, and they divided us up. 90 stayed there, and the rest of it went to Okinawa. So I got lucky and I got to Okinawa.
April 1st, 1945 marked the start of the Battle of Okinawa. The United States Marine and Army forces went head-to-head against the Japanese Army, lasting approximately 81 days. The Battle of Okinawa proved to be the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War. Casualties totaled more than 38,000 Americans wounded and 12,000 Americans killed or missing, and cost 100,000 Japanese lives, including the commanding generals on both sides.
And we got into the China Seas. Waves come up, and they'd probably lift it 35, 40 feet up in the air. Then it would disappear. Then it would fall down, and the wave would hit us in the middle, and the boat would start to bend. Now, any minute, I thought those wells would break. They're 3/4 inch plate steel, and I thought sure they'd break. That happened all night long. We were in a convoy. I don't know how big it was. Could have been 100 ships or so. But the next morning it was the curvature of the earth, and there wasn't a ship in sight. We were the only ones there.
During the Battle of Okinawa, over 368 ships were damaged and 36 were destroyed. Oil spilt from the ships resulted in many hazardous outcomes.
It broke our wind gauge at 170 miles an hour. And that was broken, so it was beyond that. And the oil, the real thick oil, and I could just see their eyes bouncing up, down, but you couldn't save them because there's just, you couldn't get into the oil. We got to Okinawa, and the 127th Division was there, and they wouldn't go in because they wanted to shell it more. So they put us right underneath the battle wagon, and the guns were over the top of us, shooting all night long. That would, wake us up, to keep us awake. And they were shelling Okinawa then. Naha was the main city, and we were shelling that. All night long, all day long, all night, probably 4 or 5 days. And it was right over our ship because we were just underneath it. So they'd shoot the whole side of there was so many guns, but when they shot, the boat would shift back 7, 8 inches, and then they'd start all over again. And we were right underneath that all night long, all day long. So we didn't get any rest at all.
After a few days of combat aboard the ship, Bill joined other troops on Okinawa to continue the fight.
On Okinawa, there was a guy laying there. He was split wide open. He wanted me to kill him. But I couldn't do it because I thought, the medics would come by and help him. But I left him there. I don't know what happened to him. But I know he couldn't have survived because he was just cut down through the middle, wide open. They had the caves, and the damn Japs were in the caves. And we go to pick them up, and a kid came out, and he had his arm blown off here, and they had maggots eating it, just all kinds of it. So we cleaned him up and sent him to the hospital. They finally put the Marines come in. There's a bunch of kids come in, 17, 18 years old. And they were all gung-ho. They were ready to go. So they got there, and they got just to the shore, and the Japanese opened up and killed them all. They must have killed 3,000 that night. And the Japanese told the Okinawans that we were like barbarians. We'd raped the women and everything else. So they started to commit suicide. And the hills were, probably 100 feet tall. And they'd jump off of that and commit suicide. All of them were committing suicide. and I'm just going over the rough part of it.
At least 100,000 civilians were either killed in combat or were ordered to commit suicide by the Japanese military.
But we finally got them convinced that, we were nice people, and we started to feed them, and they started to stick around then. The Yokohama River was full of bodies where people were getting out of the fire and getting into the river. And you could almost walk across from one shore to the other. They still didn't give up. So then we dropped the atomic bomb, and that killed 70,000 people. They still didn't give up. Then we dropped the next bomb, that killed 50,000 people, and they still didn't give up. So they finally wanted a peace, but they wanted it on their terms. MacArthur says, no, you have to completely surrender. He says, unconditionally. And that's the way it left. And of course, I met Mary before the war, so she turned around, I turned around. We met each other. So I took her out to have a Coke, and I think we went to a show or something. And from then on, she went home, told her mother, that's the guy I'm going to marry. Before the war, she wanted to marry me. And I said, no, I'm just going to be cannon fodder. So we wouldn't get married. So she waited for me until after the war. So that's the first thing I did was get married. We married in the old stone church up in Rockton.
How'd you win her over?
How did I don't know, just good looks, I guess. No, I had a body that everybody wanted me. Most of the girls.
Throughout my time working on Bill's doc, I learned about the stories of his life. Bill was taken from us on October 15, 2018, and although I never had the opportunity to meet him, I can tell he impacted everyone's lives he walked into, including mine. I hope this documentary will carry on his story.
What's the secret to living to 97?
Easy. Just don't worry about other people. Do what you want to.
That's how you live long? Is not to stress?
That's how I live long, yeah.
What advice do you have for us?
Nothing. Do you need any money for jeans?
Yeah, fix them for him. I knew that would happen when I put these on this morning.
I slugged a military cop one time. And
Can you explain that story?
that was a no-no.
What was your plan primary reason for taking vet doc?
Well, I originally wanted to take vet doc because my sister took it like 5 years ago and she wanted me to take it, but I decided I wanted to take it because I like play soccer and all that. So it was just kind of something for me to do like for somebody else rather than just myself.
What kinds of lessons has your vet taught you?
Well, even though I never really got to meet my vet because he passed away before I could actually meet him, during his interview they asked him what his worst memory was, and he had replied with he doesn't really see it as like a worst memory. He just kind of, whatever happened and like just to keep looking on. And so I kind of just think about that for my life situations and try to consider his words of advice into my like own life.
What has vet doc taught you?
Vet doc has taught me how to manage my time like way better because I'm like one to really procrastinate everything. So it's really helped me manage my time, and it's taught me to be less selfish. Making your doc, you kind of need to keep in the back of your mind that it's not for you, it's for somebody else, and they're going to be watching it, and you're holding their story and making it into a documentary. So it's really just kind of really made me less selfish in the end.